Thanks for coming back on here. It's cool to have you back on. And for people who don't know, you were on episode 153, which is one of my favorite episodes so far. It's actually one of the most viewed, I think like fifth most viewed YouTube video, and one of like probably the top 10 audio podcasts. So it's obviously been something that people are responding to well.
Nice. I like that.
We talked about you a little bit, obviously, on the first episode, but if you just want to tell us a little bit about you again, just kind of introduce yourself, we'll, do that. And then we'll get into, what our main topic's going to be today.
Yeah. So my name is Melanie Neutz for anybody who doesn't know. I am a bikini competitor. I am also a hairdresser. And then I am now a health and fitness coach as well. I now joined a team of coaches and physical therapists and massage therapists. And we all work together, and I'm now actually doing it. I don't think that I had done it then. So.
The main reason I wanted to have you back on here, and especially kind of right now in the thick of things for you, is talk about how things are going on your adventure, your prep. It's such a exciting time.
Yeah, it is exciting.
So just, how far out are you?
I'm 2 weeks out right now.
Nice. So you're really starting, I mean, not really starting, but you're feeling it, you're feeling all of it.
Yeah, definitely. I think, every prep is different. So I think last year I did a 14-week prep, and like 14 weeks out, I pretty much felt like I was in prep. And then now I think that like this week I've kind of just started feeling it. So everyone's a little bit different, but yeah, I'm definitely feeling like I'm in prep.
And does it feel almost like, in some ways that your body, does it almost remember, or does it not necessarily get used to, like after you've been through a few, does it almost like respond better? You know what I'm saying? Like anything like that?
It's different for everybody. I think it depends on the person. And like I said, every single prep is different. It's very bizarre. Like sometimes like you'll start a prep and it takes you a while to get there. And then sometimes you'll do it and you're like there immediately. Like, like I said, last year I did a 14-week prep, and like 14 weeks out is when I started feeling pretty bad. And, I was pretty much ready. Like I think maybe 11 or 12 weeks out, I was pretty much ready. So we were kind of like not really feeding me into the show. Like into that show, I was a little bit too lean for that one, and it was hard to fill me out. And then this one, it's like I'm not lean enough yet. Like I wouldn't say I'm necessarily behind right now. I would say I'm right on track. Whereas last year I was like way ahead, to where it was like my metabolism was just like going crazy, versus this year it's kind of more regulated. But my second one last year, it's like we couldn't feed me enough to fill me out. And then the third one, which it was just a continual prep, I didn't stop and get out of prep ever. But my third one, it's like my body wasn't responding, and it could have been a lot of different things. But a lot of times it's just like too much prep, you know what I'm saying? So I backed off of prep and took a little bit of an off season and improvement season. And then now I'm back into it, and my body's not responding as well. I would say in the past 2 weeks, I started responding. So it took about 10 weeks for me to respond.
Is there almost like a time beforehand when you're like, my body's ready for this kind of thing? Like, do you ever feel like that's the optimal time? Like my body's going to respond, or is it just almost like in some ways, not a shot in the dark, but you're maybe some feeling of uncertainty if it's going to happen the way you want it to happen?
I feel like as an athlete, you're always uncertain and you're always questioning if you're ready. And that's why it's so important to have a coach, because they're the ones to tell you, like guide you and tell you what to do. And they know if you're ready or not. And a lot of times, like you'll see athletes that will try to compete for a show and they end up getting pulled. And a lot of times it's, it could be that they cheated on their diet too many times and they're not responding because of that. They're not following their protocol. They're not training hard enough. And sometimes it's just simply like not their fault. They're just not responding. So in that case, they'll get pulled. But, a lot of times as athletes, like I know even last year, I was way too lean for my shows and it was hard to fill me out last year. I even felt like myself as an athlete, I felt like I wasn't ready and I wasn't lean enough. And it's so interesting because your mind, it's just like, it's so crazy in prep. Like you're always messing with yourself. Like a lot of times I'll have to wear just like loose, baggy clothing so that you don't really look at yourself, because you're not going to look at yourself subjectively like a coach would.
Right. And you know, another thing you mentioned that I found interesting was how you said you're feeling almost like behind versus how you were the last couple times. It was almost like ahead. Does it feel though that sometimes being on track is a little scary in a way, because in some ways you obviously want to be like on track is the best place to be, but being on track is also like one step from being behind. Does it ever feel like being on track is kind of like intimidating a little bit?
Absolutely. No, I think you're right on point with that. When you're ahead, a lot of times whenever you're ahead in prep, you get to kind of feed into the shows. So it's a little bit more fun that way, just because you get to eat a lot more food into it. But it's just because like you diet. Sometimes it's like you diet too hard or you do too much cardio and you're like, okay, wait a minute. You responded better than I thought. And then you got to feed into the show and you're worried about filling out, because bodybuilding isn't about who's coming in the leanest. It's, a lot of different things as far as the criteria that you get judged by. And it's different for every division. But bikini, for example, they don't want you shredded. So looking shredded 10 weeks out, like, while that might feel good as a competitor to be like, I'm way ahead, I don't have anything to worry about. It's like, well, you're also looking at losing muscle tissue. You're looking at a lot of different things. So I think being on track is better than being too lean and having to fill out. Now, with that being said, if you are behind, that's worse than being ahead. So it can go one way or another. But I think that for my physique in particular, I'm definitely coming in a lot fuller this year. I've put on a lot more muscle. So I think for me, like, it's messing with my head as far as the scale goes, because I'm pretty far up above my stage weight from last year. So that kind of messes with my head, thinking I have a long way to go. But my coach is like, no, you've put on a lot of muscle tissue, so you don't need to get down to what we did last year. So it's kind of messing with my head. But sometimes, like, you just have to take yourself out of that and just trust your coach and know that their plan is what's best for you and it's going to work.
Yeah. And it sounds like, kind of from what you're saying too, in an athlete's head, being on track is almost like being behind. It's because it's weird how time works. Whenever you're on one side of it, 2 weeks can seem like such a long time, but from another perspective, it's like, wow, we have so much to do in 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Yeah, and it's interesting because I did a 12-week prep. This has been a 12-week prep, so I'm 10 weeks in, and like, I didn't start responding until about last week. So the whole time I'm doing all this cardio, dieting really hard, training really hard, and I wasn't seeing any changes with my progress. The scale was not going down. Most of the time it was going up. And it's really frustrating. And it's really hard to sit there and say, my coach is doing what's best for me and this is the right plan, when like you see no changes over a long period of time, and training so hard and everything. It's like you're putting in all the work and you're not seeing the results, and then all of a sudden it's like, bam, it just happens.
What obstacles specifically for this prep have you faced that have been kind of different for you? We talked about kind of how it just almost took a little bit longer, but like, more specifically, what were those challenges or those obstacles along this prep that made this one kind of, its own thing?
I think, if I'm being totally honest, like, after my last prep last year in July, I wouldn't say fell off the wagon or anything, but I mentally was not into this sport anymore. I was questioning if I even wanted to do it. And, I never told anybody about this really until I got further down the road to where I decided, like, yes, I do love bodybuilding. This is what I love to do. But I think I was just like so deep into prep for so long, and I had missed out on a lot of life experiences. It felt like that I was like, I don't know if I want this. And I took, like, I think I told you in the last podcast that we did, I took a month off, and it wasn't even like off. It's just, I didn't follow a very, very strict meal plan. I still had my meals and I prepped all my meals, but like maybe twice a week I'd go out to eat with friends or something like that. Or if I went to the state fair, I'd have a funnel cake. You know, I wasn't like mentally worried about progress because that just made my mind go crazy. So with that, you know, I did get a little bit behind, or at least I felt like I did. With like progress. So I think getting into this prep, I was just like worried that my off season wasn't enough. So I think that getting into prep, I felt kind of guilty not putting in my all during that month. But I do think that month like taught me a lot in a lot of different ways and a lot of different things. And it made me realize that I did love bodybuilding and this is what I want. Another thing that I faced is I actually have a stress fracture in my back right now. So that's been interesting to deal with because my feedback from the judges was that I need more glutes. Well, to train glutes, it involves a lot of back. To train legs, it involves a lot of back. So there's a lot of things I'm restricted. And I wasn't even sure if I was able to do this show. So prepping for a long period of time and still having the question mark of, am I going to step on stage? That was mentally tough because every day you question, well, is this even worth it? Because I'm in 10 weeks, am I even going to be able to get up there? I don't even know. So like, I'm like working my butt off and putting all these hours in, and am I even going to be able to do it? So that's been kind of frustrating. And I'm going to step on stage as long as it doesn't get worse, but it's been very finicky. Like one week it feels semi okay-ish. And then the next week I'm like super worried that I might wake up the next day and not be able to walk. And some days it is like that. So it's been a tough prep as far as that injury goes and like my mental state. But I think that with that back injury, it's made me realize how much I do actually want this. It kind of put the perspective back in my mind that I do love this sport, because when it's kind of taken away from you, you're like, oh man, now I like really want it, versus before I took it for granted.
And I think last time too, you mentioned in one of your previous preps, you had like a foot or ankle injury, and you had to kind of like change the way you did some cardio and stuff, right?
Yeah. Last year when I started prep, as soon as I started prep, I broke my foot and I was in a boot for that entire 14-week prep.
So just kind of dealing with overcoming obstacles. I think that's almost the theme of just like I guess bodybuilding in general is just like, what obstacles, what things are going to happen and how can we overcome them? And in a lot of ways that's life.
For sure. No, absolutely. And like I said, I think it kind of like, I think it always happens for a reason. Like, I'm not going to say, oh, poor me, my back's broken and I'm in prep or whatever. Like, I'm going to look at it as, that happened for a reason. I think it gave me a good perspective on this sport again, instead of kind of going through it and like taking it for granted. Like, every competitor complains about being hungry or being tired or whatever. And I'm thinking, I wish that I could just be hungry or tired. I wish that my complaint wasn't that I had a broken back, but I think it gives me a perspective on the next prep when I don't have any injuries, which hopefully one day that will happen. I'm so thankful for when all I'm worried about is being hungry.
Right. Have you done anything differently? Have you focused on different things for this one? Like, how is this one kind of unique?
Yeah. So I think that every prep is a little bit different, like I said, but I think this one versus like last year, my other ones, I made it so prevalent that bodybuilding was number one. And I was going to like, I told myself last year, while I was in prep, I'm focusing on bodybuilding. So like, I hate to say it, but work is second. And my family and my friends, like, they're going to have to just deal with the fact that I don't have enough time in the day for them. And I don't, um, have the energy and stuff like that. And I think this one, I've made it a point to where I'm like, okay, last year I said that I was going to prep and I was going to really focus on that. And I did. And I'm really glad that I did. But I was so consumed in bodybuilding that after it was over, I didn't know what to do. So this one, I said that I'm going to have a little bit more of like a balance with this. So while prep is number one, my relationships with people are also number one, and my work is also number one. So while that sounds very hard, I'm like, I'm really big on New Year's resolutions. So one of my resolutions was to work less. I work too much. I definitely work way too much. So instead of working so much, I'm going to spend a day off and hang out with a friend instead. And so I'm trying to balance everything out a little bit more and kind of like, I guess, be a little bit more just like not so uptight about bodybuilding. So like if I don't go to bed by 7:30, I'm not going to flip out. I'm just going to like say, okay, it is what it is. I stayed a little extra at work, or, my friend has this party or get together and she really wants me to go. It's her birthday. I'm just going to go. Like, I'm not going to skip out on life things because of bodybuilding. I think that's ridiculous. And honestly, it was miserable when I did it last year. I felt like nobody in the world understood me. And I think this year I have a little bit more balance with things. And that's honestly been better for my mindset. So I think those things are entirely different. And my mindset about it is different too. While bodybuilding is number one, there are other things that can also be number one too.
Has that kind of made this a little bit more of like an enjoyable ride?
I think so, for sure. I think, last year I had like countdowns of when my show was, which I think it's great. Like, I was super excited and dedicated, and I did pretty well last year in all my shows. And it's because, you put in the work and it shows, your hard work is always going to pay off. But I think that identifying myself, like you said, as like, I am a bodybuilder, and it's like, I don't want to be that. Like, that's not too fun. It's just like, you got to have other things. You got to have other outlets. Like, I love doing a million other things, and I'm not going to stop doing those things just because bodybuilding is, at times it can be all consuming, but you don't have to let it be. Like, when you have that extra burst of energy, go do something else that you love, and that's okay.
To a degree, that's what makes us great, but at the same time, it's also could be, the downfall of all the hard work and things like that if we just get burnt out on something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the prime example of that is me last year in July after that show. I had just gotten in a relationship and I wanted to go on dates. Like, I don't know when the last time I actually went on a legit date, and we went on dates and it was like so much fun. Like, I remember we went to a wine tasting at Huber's, and that was like the most fun date I've ever had. And I was like, this is way better than bodybuilding. Great, like, and I love it with all my heart. I do. But there are other things, and while I am a bodybuilder, that's not all that I am. And I think last year that's all that I was. So when it came down to not doing it, I didn't know what to do with my time. I love social media for, the reasons why I have it, but sometimes it can definitely be like, I wouldn't say bad, but it can mess with your mind sometimes. Like, during that time, and I was kind of just like doing my thing, and I was like going on dates and having fun, I would look on social media and at all the competitors getting ready for this show or that show, and I'm like, man, I'm way off. Like, you feel like you're doing something wrong, but it's like, you're not doing anything wrong. You're doing what's right for you, and that's a good thing. You shouldn't focus on what anybody else is doing. It's only what you're doing. And sometimes social media can skew your perception with that.
Definitely. So when it comes to this prep, what do you feel like is kind of the biggest thing or biggest lesson that you've learned about, whether it be yourself or bodybuilding or kind of just prep in general?
I think just like any prep, like, just the work is always going to pay off no matter what it is. Like, and I think that too, you can do multiple hard things at once. You can push yourself to that. Now, I don't think you should push yourself past a certain limit, of course, like an unhealthy limit. But like, I mean, not to brag or anything, but like during a prep, I still like at work made a promotion, and I made top in the district, and I made a lot of work goals while being in prep, like 3 weeks out and 4 weeks out. So a lot of people say that they put things on the back burner because they're in prep. And I think everybody takes prep differently. Everybody has to prep differently. Some people's preps are harder than other. I mean, every single person is different with it, but I don't think that you should just put everything on the back burner because of prep. And I did that last year. Like, I'm not going to lie. I did it last year. I've experienced that firsthand, and it's not a good feeling. Like, doing worse at work and like compromising a lot of different relationships with people. And then after you get out of prep, you have to like rebuild all those things and like apologize to people for bailing on them for not going to their birthday parties or whatever. And it's like, you don't need to be that person. It's like, it's okay. Bodybuilding is great. It's prep is awesome, but like, you can do those things and still hang out with your people and still be a normal human. Just like bring your meals, bring your water. It's not that big of a deal.
And do you feel almost like mastering self-awareness is a big part of prep?
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people are, they're consumed in prep, and like we're definitely a little bit more irritable, a little bit lower energy. So as far as like dealing with people, it's a little bit harder. I work in the service industry as a hairdresser. So I have to talk to people all day, and I can't tell you how exhausting that is. Like, I'd rather run laps around the whole store than talk to people. Not that it's not enjoyable. I like talking to people. It just takes a lot of energy to do it, a lot more than you would imagine. So like, yeah, I think that while that can be hard, like I said, you can't just like not do it. You can't say I'm in prep, so I'm going to be a terrible person. I don't think that's an excuse at all. Some people are like, excuse me, I'm just in prep. And I don't think that's an excuse.
So something that I think is really cool is the process of prepping, because it's like this, you're pushing your body and as well as your mind to these limits, mental and physical almost limits. For people who may not have ever been through that experience, or probably don't know much about it if they haven't been through it, is there any kind of like life experience? Is there anything that you would kind of compare a bodybuilding prep to somebody who doesn't necessarily have that bodybuilding prep experience?
Yeah, I would definitely say running is very comparable to it. I used to run cross country in high school, and I remember my coach saying that there was, it's really funny actually, because this girl that I was competing against in cross country for the varsity spot, our coach was like, okay, your all's timing is about the same. So whoever wins this race gets varsity. And it's actually really funny because the girl right now, we're in prep together doing the same show in 2 weeks. But this was way back in like junior year of high school. I don't like 2013 or 14 or something like that. And so we were like racing against each other. And I remember like really wanting to get on varsity. So I'm like running in this race, and I'm like super anxious beforehand. So I'm having like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And I'm like a stress eater. So I would eat all this food, and it was like storming. So it got like delayed, and I'm just like eating the whole time. And we got to racing, and the whole time I'm just like, I have to throw up like this whole time. And we're just like side by side running and not saying a word to each other because we're competing against each other for that varsity spot. And like, we both like threw up the whole time, but we kept going. It's like we would run and we'd just like turn our heads and throw up and then keep going because neither of us wanted to give up on that spot. So I think that's obviously pushing past your limit. We would throw up and then keep running and then throw up and then keep running. And that's like way past that limit. So I think bodybuilding is very similar to that. It's just instead of it being like after that race, you can obviously get back to good health and drink your water and then eat food and you go take a nap and you can eat whatever you want and then not run the next day if you don't feel like it. With bodybuilding, it's that every single day, that feeling of you can't ever stop it. It's like, today is hard and tomorrow might be harder, but you have to do what you have to do no matter what if you want that spot.
Right. And you kind of mentioned something there that I think is one of the most challenging things. And I know it is for me as well. Like, you have this goal, you work really hard for it, you put it all in, and then it comes and you're really excited and you get to the day and you achieve it, you step on stage, whatever the goal is. And then it's like restart. in a lot of ways. It's like you're never further away from your goal than when you just accomplish, your goal. Your next goal then is when you just accomplish the current goal. So how does
Mhm.
that kind of play on your mind?
Everybody's so different with that, and you're exactly right about that. When I get on stage in 2 weeks, it's like after I get off, it's like that was it. What now? So I think for me, and every competitor is different, but for me, having a plan for after the show before I even get to the show is key. So as far as like keeping my motivation, like the only thing getting me to get up and go to the gym the next day after a show, and maybe not the next day, but like the day after that, is just having that goal in front of me. So it's like after this show, I have a next one lined up 4 weeks after that. And then after that, like depending on how I do, if I do well, like that one will be a national show. So if I win, then I'll get my pro card. And then my next thing is to plan my pro debut. And then if I don't get my pro card, then the next one's 2 weeks after that to get my pro card. And then if I don't get my pro card there, the next one after that is 4 weeks after that, and so on. So having that goal, like, okay, if I don't get this, this is my next one. And then if I do, then we're going to be talking about my pro debut, which is even more exciting. So
Right.
having that goal and a reason to get back in the gym and get back at it, that is like key for me. And I know some people are like, they have to kind of just live in the moment, and they're saying, well, I'm focusing on this and this only, because if I plan too many things ahead, my mind's everywhere and my mind has to be at this show. So they do that show, and then afterwards, then they'll discuss what's next. They don't want to think about what's next because it messes with their mind too much. But for me, I'm like, I have to have the next goal ahead before I even get to the first one.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good thing, I think, to do. I can't remember what, I think there's a specific name for it, but like people who kind of have like depression after they achieve such a big goal, and I'm sure it's something that if you don't have goals kind of laid out in front of you afterwards, it can be a big, like rebound to putting on weight, or, losing those fitness gains that you put on, or whatever it is. And you kind of mentioned like what you have in store, planned ahead for the next, couple months or whatever it is. But as far as like bodybuilding in general, you kind of mentioned you have this renewed appreciation for it because of injuries and because of kind of some time that you took a little bit away from it. But is it something that you see, partaking for, the rest of, your potential prime career of bodybuilding?
Yeah, I definitely do. Now I obviously, like, I take it one show at a time. So I think after each show I get different feelings, and I don't want to say that, I'll do like this year and then quit, or I'll do next year and quit, or I'll do it for the next 15 years. I have no idea what's in store for me. So right now I'm just enjoying it and I'm loving it, and I'm just going to keep rolling with it. But that's honestly just my personality anyway. I just kind of like fly by the seat of my pants, and I just kind of roll with things and let things happen the way that they should. And whatever I'm feeling, if it feels good, I do it.
Yeah.
So if it feels good to, maybe take a step back and have more of a balanced lifestyle, that's what I'll do. But if it feels good to compete and, get to my best physique possible and do well in this sport, then that's what I'll do. And for right now, I think, doing the sport is what makes me happy and it feels good. So that's where I'm at right now.
And I think that's a good, attitude to have about it, good mindset to have about it. Was there ever a time when you felt like obligated to do it? I feel like the way my personality is, if I say I'm going to do, XYZ, of course I'm going to achieve that goal. But like, do you ever, or have you ever, did you ever maybe previously feel like if I stop doing this, it's going to look bad? Or if I stop doing this, it's going to make me feel like I'm letting other people down, like anything like that, to where it's almost beyond, it's almost going beyond, I guess, what you want. It's kind of basing it off of the outside perspective.
No, I've never felt like that because I honestly don't care what other people think about me. I don't care about their opinions on what I'm doing, where I'm going, where I'm at. I do not care at all. It all is based on what I feel and what I want to do. So I've never felt obligated by anybody else. I will say I felt obligated by myself if that makes sense. Like last year, whenever I was like not motivated to go to the gym and I wasn't necessarily enjoying it, I felt obligated because I knew there was one day I'd wake up and want it so bad. And that did come. So like whenever I went to the gym and I was training and I was on my meal plan, and every wedding I went to, I brought my meals and I didn't eat the cake and, you know, all that stuff, all those things. I didn't want to do those at the time. But I felt obligated to do them so I could make my progress needed throughout that off season, because I knew one day I would wake up and think I want this so bad. And that did happen. So I'm glad that I kind of like mustered up the energy to just push through that and just kind of suck it up and get over it. So I think, you know, it was more so for myself, but it wasn't for anybody else but me. Back in July, it was kind of the beginning of July, my last 3 to 4 weeks of prep, until probably about 4 weeks ago, I had no motivation. I had no drive. I did not. I questioned every day that I went to the gym and was like, I don't know if I really want this. You know, I was like, but I know that one day I will. And I'm really glad, because now I go to the gym and I like love it. Like I left the gym today after being there for like 4 hours and I was like, I could stay here all day. Like I just love this place. And like I have 70 minutes of cardio that I do on the stairs, and I'm like running on the stairs the whole time, but I just play my music and like dance on the stairs, and I just have fun with it. And like I'll just dance around the gym and listen to my music and like vibe out in there and like push myself. And it is seriously so much fun. Like when you get to that point where things just like click, it's so much fun and you just feel like you're on fire. And that is like the best feeling for me. So for so many months, I've been waiting for that feeling to come back. And I'm so glad that I've progressed and I've done everything that I was supposed to do in my off season, so that now I can just sit here and enjoy it and love it.
Having that kind of, you know, positivity, I think is such a powerful tool in life, but also just a powerful tool in obviously bodybuilding and a prep, to where your mind probably does start to get a little foggy and you're just thinking sometimes of like, what the heck am I doing? But, you know, having that positivity, I think, is such a powerful tool.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, and you got to think too, like, while bodybuilding is hard and it's partially suffering, you know, but it's really fun. Like, the suffering portion is like the fun of it. Like, I can't even explain it, but that's like the best part for me. The fact that, like, I wake up and I do this stuff every day, and it's all about like, you know, my meals are delicious. I love my meals. I love every single part of my meals and my food, but it's about like checking those boxes. So it's like meal one, done, cardio, done, training, done, work, done, sleep, 8 hours of sleep, done, or however much you can get in a night. But it's just about checking those boxes and doing the best that you can. But, you know, even though it's just like so regimented and it's like, it a little bit kind of like suffering through it a little bit, because you are starving, you are doing more training than your body can handle, you're doing a lot more cardio than you probably should be doing, but it's like right for your journey. And and just knowing that and just going on with the plan and finally seeing those results, it's like, man, I remember that one day where I really did not want to do that cardio, and now I'm looking in the mirror and I see the changes that it made in me. And that's great. And that's so exciting. And I'm so proud of myself. And that's like the best feeling ever.
I think that when you said I'm so proud of myself, that was what I was taking away from it too, is a lot of people don't push themselves and they don't know what it's like to feel like that. And that's such a sad thing, you know, not being able to feel proud of yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I know that, you know, my dad, when I was younger, my dad used to always tell me, you have to do 10 things that you don't want to do for one thing that you do want. And that is very true in all aspects of life.
Yeah, I agree. That's, I think, what makes life fun too, is like, sure, we could all do the same things day in and day out that were, you know, keeping us in our comfort zone, but no one's growing from that, you know. And you kind of mentioned like getting these promotions and having all these kind of goals set outside of bodybuilding too. And it just kind of goes to show like what's possible when we do truly set goals and push ourselves and almost allow ourselves to have the potential to fail. Because I think that's a big part of it too, is like, yeah, I might not be able to do this, but I'm also not going to do it anyway if I don't try.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. Because whenever I messed up my back, I could like not even walk. They put me on medical leave for work, and I was in a back brace sitting on the couch, and I couldn't go to the gym or do anything. And then finally, when I was cleared to go to the gym, they said I could do cardio on the recumbent bike. And I didn't even know what that was. I had to look up what a recumbent bike was. And as I'm doing it, like a couple days in, I end up straining my quads doing the recumbent bike. So I like finished out my cardio on the arm bike. I'm like, I'm not giving up on this stuff. If the doctor gives me the green light to go, then I'll go. I'll do whatever he says, and I won't do anything else. If he tells me not to do X, Y, and Z, I'm not doing X, Y, and Z. But if he gives me that green light, I'm going to go. So I went for it. And, so far it's like I wasn't responding. And I think that was like really frustrating, because on top of this injury and then doing my best, I was like, there's nothing else that I can do. So that was really frustrating. And all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, it's just like, for no reason at all, I just started responding out of nowhere. And it was, I was just like, man, all those times where like I finished out on the arm bike, or I had to figure out different cardio because of my back injury, and then I strained my quads and like couldn't really do legs, and I can't really do glutes, like all these things lining up. I'm like, all those things I had to figure out, it's all coming back to me now. And it's like, I'm like, it's all worth it.
There's a lot of, cool aspects to prep and even just to fitness in general. You just have that opportunity to go into the gym, overcome the challenge of even just weight. I think that can do crazy things for you for your character. But I don't want to take up any more of your time. I know you have to get those 8 hours in tonight. I appreciate you coming back on the podcast, and best of luck with the continuation of your prep.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Before we head out though, if you want to let people know where they can follow you on social media, that'd be cool.
Yeah. So you can follow me I mostly am just on Instagram. It's just my first and last name, Melanie Neutz. And then Facebook as well, just first and last name. I have a TikTok, but I don't really use it, to be honest. But you can follow me on there if you want to. And I think it's just my first and last name as well.